thank Professor Vasari, Giuseppe, my friend, for inviting me once again to this prestigious event and to speak amongst such esteemed colleagues from the US and from all over Europe. We spoke a lot today about the misconceptions and the myths about ECT, and the media have a huge part to play in that portrayal. Films like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and more recently Homeland, the TV series. So I spend a lot of my time trawling the internet. As a very optimistic person, I like to believe that one day Hollywood will produce an accurate TV programme or movie about ECT. So I apologise now for giving this airplay, but I think it's really important that we understand where some of these myths come from.
I'm sorry. I can't hear you. Just tell me. Just tell me who you love. Antonio or Luis. Sharon, please, reconsider your answer. I don't want to keep doing this to you. Tell me, who do you love? Antonio or Luis? Please tell me you don't remember the name of the man you love. How much more is anything?
Please help me. Please help me.
Please, can't help you. I can't.
Okay, so I think you get the general idea there. This movie plays no relationship to what real ECT is, and as you saw from the video Dr. Ulrich showed you this morning, it plays no resemblance. But the internet is out there for the general public and journalists to watch, and unfortunately, when they watch things like this is what they believe. This is an article from the BBC News Health Bulletin, and when I started to read it, my heart sank again, thinking again it was another negative article about ECT, and actually it turned out not to be. The idea of treating a psychiatric illness by passing a jolt of electricity through the brain was one of the most controversial in the 20th century medicine. So why are we still using this procedure? As described by its critics as barbaric and ineffective, so leading to another negative article. But as you read on, you'll find out that John was a 64-year-old gentleman who said that he had what he described as a breakdown in the 1990s, which was triggered by the collapse of his marriage and stress at work. He said we had a nice house, a nice lifestyle, but it was all just crumbling away. My depression was starting to overwhelm me. I lost control. I became violent, he explained. But at the end of the article, what John said was, before ECT, I was the walking dead. I had no interest in life, I just wanted to disappear. After ECT, it felt like there was a way out of it. I felt dramatically better. And there is no more powerful evidence base than the patient's story, as we heard this morning so eloquently put from our two patient colleagues in the room. This is the evidence that actually displays to the general public that ECT works. You've seen this statement already this morning from Dr. Cullen's presentation, a statement from the Lancet back in 1981 following an audit by Pippard, a national audit in the UK by Pippard and Elm in 1979. Very damning but very accurate of its time. Now we've also heard today that change in psychiatry happens at a glacial pace. And it reminds me of that old joke. How many psychiatrists does it take to change a light bulb? Only one, but the light bulb needs to want to change. So it took us another 15 years before we were able to change in Scotland. And in 1996, Sean started out as a national audit project to answer questions about clinical practice, facilities, staffing, training and the efficacy of ECT in Scotland. The initial audit was paper-based and funded by the Clinical Resource Allocation Group at the Scottish Government. The paper audit ran for 3 years and the findings were published in the year 2000. Following on from the audit, the Chief Medical Officer for Scotland recommended that the audit should continue and should continue to improve standards at ECT in Scotland. Since then, Sean has continued to grow and has developed into a national clinical network and accreditation project, which is endorsed by the Royal College of Psychiatrists, the Royal College of Anaesthetists, Healthcare Improvement Scotland, the Mental Welfare Commission and the British Anaesthetic and Recovery Nurse Association. The membership of our network includes consultant psychiatrists responsible for ECT, consultant anaesthetists responsible for ECT, ECT nurses, operating department practitioners, recovery nurses, service user agencies, patients and carers, the Mental Welfare Commission for Scotland, and Scottish Government. And data are collected via an electronic integrated care pathway which is set up in every ECT clinic in Scotland. Scotland's a very small country and there are currently 18 treating clinics in Scotland. Now at the initial audit there were 36 treating clinics and we've narrowed that down to 18. However, there are 39 prescribing hospitals, which means that ECT is available in all geographic areas across Scotland, but patients now have to travel to have their treatment. 100% of clinics and 100% of ECT clinicians are members of Sean. We carry out peer accreditation visits, and I attend every visit for continuity, and I take along an ECT consultant psychiatrist, an ECT consultant anaesthetist, and an ECT nurse. And I pull these from different health boards within Scotland. The visits are both announced, and we will let a clinic know 6 weeks before we're going to turn up to do a visit. And on the day of the visit, we turn up 1 hour before treatment commences, and each discipline interviews their counterpart discipline at that clinic. We observe treatment, we observe recovery, and we actually provide them with a report on that day. In that report there will be recommendations with timescales attached, and then we'll do a follow-up unannounced visit where I will turn up at a clinic and make sure that the recommendations that we've made have been put in place. We use evidence-based standards from guidelines from the Royal College of Anaesthetists, the Association of Anaesthetists for Great Britain and Ireland, the Royal College of Psychiatrists, NICE, the Royal College of Nurses, the British Anaesthetic and Recovery Nurse Association, and the Scottish Patient Safety Programme from Healthcare Improvement Scotland. We review the standards every year to make sure nothing's changed, but we publish the standards every 3 years once we've done a full round of visits, and they're due to be published again at the end of this year. There are 11 standards, ranging from information consent and prescription, preparation for ECT, the clinical environment, equipment, drugs, psychiatry, anaesthesia, nursing, recovery, team aspects and protocols and documentation. Within each standard there are levels of criteria, and the criteria are ranked in 3 levels. Level 1 is mandatory criteria, so every clinic must attain the level 1 criteria. Level 2 is additional good practice, and a clinic must attain 95% of them if they want to be considered for accreditation with excellence. And level 3 is additional desirable practice, and if a clinic is to be accredited with excellence, they have to have the majority of the level 3s as well. The biggest change to this publication is that on feedback from our ECT teams, they said it was unfair for them to have a lower level of accreditation if it wasn't their responsibility. So we've identified against each criteria the responsible clinical team, and that means the prescribing teams. So that means that if the prescribing teams don't do the preparation of the patient properly, it's not the ECT team who's going to suffer. The recommendations will be put back to the prescribing team. We have an escalation policy, so if we're out at a visit and there is a failure of a level 1 standard and it is deemed to be a risk to patients or staff, we follow the red escalation. We advise that clinic to cease delivering treatment until such time that they amend the problem or meet the standard. But we don't just leave them, we give them support either to put a resolution in place or to move the patients to another clinic until they can resolve the issue. If the issue remains unresolved, we then escalate that to the Scottish Government. And I'm happy to say, in the history of Sean, since we've been doing accreditation visits the last 10 years, we've only ever had to resort to that once. If there's a failure of a level 1 standard and it's not a risk to patients or staff, we follow the amber escalation. We discuss the issue with the ECT team and senior management, and quite often the ECT team need our support to make senior management provide them with the resources or the money or the time they require to meet the standard. A time scale is given and we do an action plan, and then I'll go back and work with the clinic to work through the action plan and resolve the issues that we've identified. If the issue remains unresolved, then we escalate that to the Chief Executive for that health board. Each round of accreditation has tougher new standards with a higher level required to achieve excellence. A round of visits have just been completed and 100% of clinics in Scotland achieved accreditation. 89% of clinics were accredited with excellence, which was a 5% improvement on the previous round of visits. This is the highest level of standards in the whole UK. So why comply with guidelines and standards? Well, the good reasons are that it improves care by ensuring treatment is person-centred. There's not a one-size-fits-all ECT treatment. Treatment should be tailored to the individual person. It makes it safe because standards are met, and it makes it more effective because the correct patients and the correct delivery of treatment is being administered. It also makes it equitable. There is no postcode lottery of ECT in Scotland. It doesn't depend where you live as to what standard of treatment you're going to get. It's equitable across the country. These are the other reasons you need to consider about complying with guidelines and standards, and not the nice ones that we want to talk about. And this is all quite new in the UK, relatively new. The last 20, 30 years, litigation has become a big thing. As clinicians, we all have a duty of care, and in order for action to be brought, there must be a breach of that duty of care. In order for that action to be successful, the breach must have caused, there must be evidence that the breach caused loss or damage to that individual. And as I say, this is quite new to us in the UK. I know that there's a longer history in the US of litigation, and each hospital has their lawyers, as Lee alluded to earlier. I was in Vegas a couple of years ago, and I was driving along the strip, and there was the big billboards, and there was a billboard for a law firm, and it said, "Sue one person, get one free." So, thankfully, we're not quite at that stage in Scotland yet. However, the floodgates have opened, and these don't pertain to ECT, but this is the payouts that have happened in the National Health Service in Scotland across the board for all treatments for the last 7 years. Now, the National Health Service does not have an ending supply of money, and if you look at these figures, especially 2010-11, £60.7 million. What could we have done with that money? So we need to have standards, we need to have guidelines, and we need people to comply with them, because it prevents this kind of thing from happening. So that's all the horrible stuff over. Let's talk about the good stuff. So this is the Shoreham Database. This is what started out as a data collection tool that grew arms and legs and developed into a clinical system. And this is set up in every single ECT clinic in Scotland to collect data on every single aspect of every single patient that gets ECT in Scotland. The data set includes demographics, concurrent medication, diagnosis and indications, consent and legal status, treatment details including the anaesthetic details, side effects and critical incidents, and outcomes by capacity, diagnosis, indications, severity of illness, and more recently by individual prescriber. We feed that back to individual prescribers in a 6-monthly report. The data is quality assured. So data are exported monthly via a secure data transfer system and processed by the team of analysts that work for me. Each data item is validated by the Shoreham Quality Assurance Manager, and data queries are fed back to individual teams to ensure accuracy in a timely manner. So at the end of every month, any issues with the data is fed back so that it's still live at the clinic. We have clean, robust data on every single patient receiving ECT in Scotland since 2006. So over 10 years worth of clean data. We use that data to produce an annual report every year, and unfortunately we're just a wee bit early. Our report gets published on the 14th of November, so I wasn't allowed to give you the most up-to-date data. So the data in the next few slides are based on last year's report. Outcome measures. We use the Montgomery-Åsberg Depression Rating Scale for our patients, the majority of whom are depressed, but we also use the Clinical Global Impression and the Clinical Global Impression for Improvement for all of the patients that have treatment. To demonstrate significant improvement, patients have to show a 50% reduction or greater improvement in the Madras score at the end of their treatment. So the key findings from last year's annual report: 367 patients received 448 episodes or courses, which involved 4,476 treatments. The most prevalent single ICD-10 diagnosis was depression without psychosis at 36%, and 23% of treatments were given as the patient's preference. That's almost a quarter of treatments. And that doesn't mean that a patient who is inappropriate for it chooses to have it. The patients have to be appropriate, but 23% of patients selected to have that as their treatment choice. 11% of treatments were given for emergency life-saving indications, and approximately 91% of patients showed an improvement in the Madras score. Now, no other treatment for severe depression come close to that. Overall, 70% of patients showed significant improvement, which meant a greater than 50% reduction in the Madras, and 82% of patients who lacked the ability to give informed consent showed significant improvement. So again, demonstrating that the patients who are the most unwell respond the best to ECT. 63% of patients with the capacity to give informed consent showed significant improvement. And the most frequent, I think Lee mentioned this as well, recorded single side effect was headache, not memory impairment. at 32%. So this graph, bar chart, shows you the colours aren't great. So the dark purple are the patients with the capacity to give informed consent, and the light kind of lilac is with the patients who don't have the capacity to give informed consent. And what you can see here is that the patients at outset that have capacity score lower on their entry madras, and the patients without capacity score higher. However, the reverse is true at the exit, where the patients who had no capacity actually do better and their madras score is lower. So now there's a health warning before I show you the next slide. Is there any academics in the room? Oh, good. Is there any statistical purists in the room? Because if there is, look away now. The next graph is my favourite graph. However, my analysts and my statisticians tell me that it's a bad graph. It's actually the favourite graph of the patients and carers group as well. It's a bad graph apparently because the score on the left axis and the right axis use different scoring systems. However, to me and to my patient and carer group, it does what it says on the tin. The patients who are most extremely ill show the most improvement. So that to me is a very simple way to demonstrate what happens in ECT in Scotland. So what I've done next is take 5 years of data and amalgamate it to give you some decent figures, because the figures we have in Scotland are really quite low. So this is based on the CGI outcomes on a number of 1,381 patients. So 37.1% were very much improved, 34.2% were much improved, 17% were minimally improved, and 8.5% showed no change. Now you might wonder why that is, but our maintenance patients fall into this category. So although it says no change, they might have been well to start with. Minimally worse is 1.8, and much worse is 1.2. So these are the patients who are not responding to treatment, no matter what we do. And 0.2% were very much worse, and this is over a 5-year period. CGI, outcomes by diagnosis, and you can clearly see that depression with psychosis, there was a 92% improvement and an 80% improved or very much improved. So again, demonstrating that the patients who are the most unwell respond the best to ECT. What I've done here is break down the indications for ECT, and I broke this down into 3 charts. The indications for ECT here, the numbers, you can give more than one indication, so it's not that I can't actually add up. So more than one indication can be ticked in the Shoreham Database as the reason for ECT. So when you break that down, I broke this down into the most serious indications, and you can see there, emergency life-saving, there's a 95% improvement rate and an 83% very much improved rate. Our more challenging patients, medication resistant to antidepressant, there's still an 86% improvement rate. And finally, previous good response, patient preference, and other category tends to be the maintenance patients. There is still an excellent improvement rate. So based on the audit by Pippard and Ellen, I've used that as a benchmark to show how Shoreham have changed practice in Scotland. So from that Pippard and Ellen report, more than a quarter of clinics used obsolete machines. After Shoreham, all ECT clinics in Scotland have up-to-date machines with EEG monitoring, backup machines and maintenance contracts. It was rare to find a consultant psychiatrist involved in the work of an ECT clinic, which is quite shocking. But after Shoreham, there's a named consultant psychiatrist responsible for ECT with protected time in their job plan. They attend sessions at least weekly, and they have a named trained deputy also with time in the job plan to cover other sessions. So for illness, for holidays, there's always an appropriately trained person to cover ECT. And the ECT consultant has to remain in the clinic until all the patients are awake and stable. Bored nursing staff, ill-trained psychiatric staff, and often no recognition of whether a convulsion had occurred. After Sean, all ECT nurses are senior grade nurses with ECT experience and protected time to run the clinic. The ECT nurse attends every session to run the clinic with a trained deputy to cover leave. Every patient is EEG monitored at every single session, and the staff are trained to recognise in time both the observed convulsion and the EEG seizure activity. Only 6 of clinics at that time were rated as satisfactory, and after Sean, as I mentioned before, every clinic in Scotland is accredited, 89% with excellence. Only a third of psychiatrists were rated as competent, and since Sean, all consultants, ECT consultants and deputies have to attend the Royal College of Psychiatrists training on a 3-yearly basis and the annual Sean conference. The other quality improvements that don't pertain to that article, the legal status and consent is checked for every single patient before every single treatment, and patients who are given informed consent are offered the opportunity to withdraw their consent at each treatment, which puts the feedback we get from the patient and carer groups is that they feel more in control of the treatment. All patients have a physical pre-anaesthetic assessment carried out and have a minimum set of investigations. All monitoring equipment in every clinic meets the latest requirements, and dantrolene is immediately available within 5 minutes, and there has to be a protocol for how to get that. All trainee doctors receive induction, training and competencies before they're ever allowed to deliver ECT without direct supervision. And there is a named consultant anaesthetist responsible for ECT who remains in the clinic until all patients are awake and stable. Only fully trained recovery nurses from the main theatre recovery unit are allowed to perform recovery ECT, and there are up-to-date protocols for every single aspect of treatment. So I hope you'll allow me to indulge myself for the next couple of slides, and there is a reason behind this. When I've done this presentation before, people have commented that we at Sean are the ECT police. My husband would probably agree with that, because he says that I have standards that for washing the dishes that if he doesn't maintain, that he's in serious trouble. These are comments from people, high-profile people in Scotland, where they have recognised the importance of ECT. And this is a comment from Dame Denise Coya, who's the Chair of Healthcare Improvement Scotland. It's reassuring to see how Sean works towards maintaining evidence-based standards and driving improvements in the quality of ECT services across the whole country. This is from Dr. John Mitchell, who's the PMO General Psychiatry at the Scottish Government. Looks fantastic as always. The take-home message is that really sick people are being treated effectively and getting better as a consequence. We have no more powerful evidence in mental health of effective treatment. We need to ensure our media lines represent this. This is from Ewan Cameron, who's the head of the mental health team at the Scottish Government. We've downloaded your full report now and it looks excellent. The accreditation work is something in particular you should be proud of. More importantly, this is the feedback that we get from our patients and carers. It's encouraging that new people want to join the reference group. We have a Sean patient and carer group who feed into our steering group. And that Sean and practitioners value our involvement. That was from the chair of that group. Over the last few years, through establishing a service user reference group to work with Sean, we're beginning to see the valuable role that lived experience can bring to the Sean network. And again, that's from the chair of that group. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak at your conference, and that's from a patient. We have an annual conference, and the morning is the latest evidence and difficult cases, but in the afternoon we hand over to patients and carers, and they organise the programme and they present at the programme. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my story, and that's from another patient. So although people, when I've given this presentation, who are not part of Sean and who are not part of ECT in Scotland, think that we're the ECT police against clinicians, this is feedback that we get from actually our clinicians. This is from a lead consultant psychiatrist in South Glasgow. Sean have been fundamental in giving our service excellent support with their accreditations to ensure we adhere to the high standards. This is an ECT nurse in West Lothian. Sean provides standards which drive improvement in service and patient care, providing information on new practices in ECT, as well as 6 monthly reports and training for both nurses and doctors. Linda Cullen has worked with St John's ECT tirelessly to improve our service. The Sean Management Support System is excellent, accessible through email or the contacts page on the Sean website, and that's from the ECT team in Lanarkshire. And since the inception of Sean, with its help and support, we feel that this has a positive impact on improving training and reducing the critical incidents in our clinic, and that's from a consultant anaesthetist in Grampian. Sean has been and will carry on to be an essential part of ECT within Scotland, and that's from an ECT nurse in Highland. So we don't alienate our clinical families, and they feel supported by Sean, and in actual fact they tend to use Sean to make sure that they get the resources, the equipment or the time that they need to meet standards. International feedback. This is a statement from Professor Simon Partry, who is the Director of the Centre of Excellence in Quebec. Simon and one of his neuroscientists came and spent 2 weeks with us a couple of years ago. Since 1996, Sean has built some important projects: your powerful clinical audit system, ECT accreditation process and national data registry, your effective ECT professional development programme, and your impressive multidisciplinary team and collaborative working network. All this contributes substantially to improve ECT practice and service in Scotland, placing you as one of the world's top leaders in this field. Sean, for us, and this is from a very, very famous professor of psychiatry, and probably the most important one that I know, Sean is for us an outstanding point of reference for ECT practice, and that's from the much beloved Professor Giuseppe Fazzelli, Medical Director in Specialty in Brescia. So, shock, horror. What all of this suggests that ECT actually does work. And not only under clinical trial conditions, but in the real world, with real patients, with compelling clinical effectiveness data too. But despite all of this evidence, the number of episodes and courses of ECT in Scotland have dropped by approximately 60% since the audit commenced in 1997. So what next? We can't rest on our laurels. We continue to improve the standards of our prescribing teams. We want to make ECT a more attractive area of psychiatry. We want to make ECT sexy. We want to make it an area, a discipline that people want to work in. Otherwise, we're going to lose those skills. Sean, I'm going to speak about that more in the next slide. And we want to increase the patient and carer involvement. And we want to improve the follow-up and assessment of side effects. Currently, the assessment of side effects is done at an acute course of treatment, but we want to extend that to 3 months, 6 months, and actually 9 months. So I think we owe a big debt of gratitude to these two very famous gentlemen, because without them, we wouldn't have the singularly most effective in modern psychiatry to treat severe depression. So I think you should give yourselves a round of applause because you supplied us with these people. So finally, some very, very exciting news, which I only got permission to share with you on Monday, and I was so excited I couldn't sleep. So for the last 10 years, I've been telling everybody and anybody that will listen for 2 seconds that if we don't standardise ECT, not only nationally but internationally, we will lose this eventually as a treatment, and we'll lose the most effective treatment for our severely ill patients. So this is a statement from the team that I'm working with at the Scottish Government, and we're being funded to upgrade our existing system from an access database, which is out of date and not user-friendly, to a web-based system. And they have agreed that providing the system that we develop is effective and appropriate for Scotland, then we will consider sharing this with other countries. And we're looking for individual clinics or individual countries who wish to collaborate on this. And what we would do is we would work with you to make the database that we use in Scotland appropriate for your area or your country. So if this is something that you might be interested in, it's just, at the moment, it's just an idea. There is nothing even written on paper. But if this is something you're interested in, please email me. I'll put my contact details up, or I'll give you a card at the end, and let me know, because the more evidence we have that this is something other countries would like to use, then the more it basically gives us a stronger case, to take this forward. So thank you.